Marcus Aurelius' Stoic Cure for Pain and Suffering. What do you do when life feels unbearable? When pain strikes and everything you once controlled slips through your fingers? This is not the story of a ruler. It's the journey of a man who found peace in the fire, wisdom in the chaos, and calm in the storm. Stay with us as we walk the path of Marcus Aurelius, the last great Stoic, because what he discovered could change the way you face your own suffering and difficulties.
The Stoic strength of Marcus Aurelius. The wind howled across the stone walls of the emperor's camp, far from the golden halls of Rome. A thin mist clung to the valley below as dawn broke, muted and gray. Marcus Aurelius, wrapped in a wool cloak, stood alone by the flickering torchlight, gazing toward the horizon where the barbarian forests whispered. This was not a scene of imperial comfort, but of war, exhaustion, and pain. The year was 174 AD, and the emperor, burdened by plague, betrayal, and the weight of an empire, was not issuing military orders, but reflecting on his life. His fingers, cold and aching, scribbled in a wax tablet by the light of a small oil lamp. What he wrote would one day be read for centuries to come. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. The rain had been falling for days over the hills of Vindobona, the cold seeping into every tent and bone of the Roman legion. The Danube, swollen with melted snow and grief, churned like the thoughts in the emperor's mind. In a dimly lit war tent, a solitary man sat hunched over a scroll, his hands calloused not only from the sword but from the burden of thought. He was not writing a letter to his generals or issuing commands to Rome. He was writing to himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These were the words of Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and philosopher of the heart. Though the world knew him as a conqueror, a ruler of unimaginable power, history remembers him not for the wars he waged, but for the war he endured within. It was the year 174 AD. Marcus Aurelius had been away from Rome for years, locked in a brutal campaign along the northern frontier. The Marcomannic wars were long and bloody, the enemies fierce and the winters merciless. Disease stalked the legions like a silent predator, claiming soldiers without the dignity of battle. But more than the swords of barbarians or the chill of the wind, Marcus Aurelius faced an invisible trial, a test of spirit. His beloved wife, Faustina, had recently died. His body ached with age and illness. His closest friend, his general Claudius Pompeianus, begged him to return to Rome, but Marcus remained. He could not abandon his duty, and so by candlelight, wrapped in a worn cloak, he wrote, not for posterity, not for politics, but as a form of survival. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Here lies the brilliance of Marcus. He saw pain not as something to be erased, but something to be endured with clarity. Where others would flinch, he chose to observe. Where others would seek escape, he sought alignment with nature, with reason, with what he called the logos, the divine order of things. One morning a young Roman officer named Lucius approached the emperor's tent. His face was pale. His brother had fallen in battle the night before. He expected comfort, perhaps permission to return home and grieve. But Marcus looked at him, eyes soft but firm.
He was my only kin.
Marcus nodded and invited him to sit by the fire. He did not offer hollow consolation. Instead, he asked,
"Was he ever promised tomorrow?"
No, but I never imagined.
We imagine many things, Lucius. We imagine permanence when all of nature reminds us that nothing lasts. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good.
Lucius did not respond. He stared into the fire, and slowly he understood. The emperor was not telling him to forget his brother. He was telling him to honor his brother by how he lived now. Marcus Aurelius believed that life was not about the absence of pain, it was about how we respond to it. In his view, the universe was neither cruel nor kind, it simply was. The Stoic path was to align oneself with that reality, not to resist it, he wrote. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. To Marcus, suffering was not an enemy, it was a forge, and character, not comfort, was the true measure of a life well lived. In 165 AD, before the wars on the frontier, Marcus returned to Rome to face another enemy, an invisible one. The Antonine Plague had swept through the empire, killing thousands each week. The streets of Rome fell silent. Families vanished, temples overflowed with offerings to frightened gods. Marcus did not flee the city, he walked its streets, he visited the sick, and he stayed among his people. When asked how he could bear such sorrow, he replied, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." And live he did, not in luxury, not in denial, but in presence. He ate simply, slept little, and wrote his meditations not in marble but on wax and parchment. These were his quiet battles, his way of reminding himself, this too is nature, this too is the path. Let us not mistake Marcus Aurelius for someone cold or unfeeling. He felt deeply, he loved his children, he mourned his losses. But he trained his mind to see grief as a teacher, not a jailer. He saw misfortune not as personal injustice, but as a universal law. When his young daughter died, he did not lash out at fate. Instead, he wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." He knew that joy and sorrow were not opposites, they were siblings. Both were reminders of being alive. Late in life, Marcus sat with his son, Commodus. History would remember the boy as cruel and erratic, but at this moment he was still a boy, looking for guidance.
Why do you never seem shaken? Not by death, not by betrayal, not by loss?
Because I do not expect the world to be anything other than what it is. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Peace comes from understanding this.
Then what should I care about?
Marcus stood and walked toward the window. The sun was setting over the Tiber.
Care for your character, care for your reason, your virtue. Those are yours. The rest, the gods may take.
This was Marcus's secret. Not detachment, but discipline. Not indifference, but insight. He knew he could not control war, disease, or death, but he could control his response. And in that he found freedom. He urged himself and us to look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look there. The emperor was now an old man, but still he wrote. He wrote to remind himself that he was not a god, not immortal, not exempt from sorrow. He wrote because he believed that the soul, appropriately trained, could withstand any storm. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So think only those thoughts that align with truth, courage, and compassion. When life hurts, Marcus would say, care less, not because you are numb, but because you are wise. Care less about what you cannot control. Care less about the opinions of others. Care less about fame, wealth, or even survival. And care more about what truly belongs to you. Your mind, your actions, your virtue. That is the Stoic way. That is the emperor's gift.
If this video touched your heart, subscribe. It's inspired by the timeless wisdom in the 7-book Rumi collection by Dr. Farid Mostaman. Whether you seek healing, love, clarity, or growth, these teachings will guide you inward to the truth of who you are.